treaty signed with 35 First Nations across southern Saskatchewan, parts of Alberta and Manitoba, and the original lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. To ensure social distancing measures are being met, we do have some members of City Administration attending the meeting today through video conferencing. I'd like to remind those members who are attending, ensure your video camera and microphone are turned off. Council knows inside the room we got microphones, and I believe, thank you. Okay. All votes will be conducted with a recorded vote. Delegations will be attending the meeting today through teleconferencing to address council on various items on the agenda. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the written brief from Dr. Bob Dixon? Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. A seconder by Councillor Findura. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Can I have someone move a motion to approve the meeting minutes from City Council meeting held on July 14th, 2021? Thank you, Councillor Stadnicek, seconded by Councillor Hawkins. Any error or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Carried. Out of the gates, we have a communication on motion 21-7. We have a motion with regards to community water fluoridation, City of Regina, from the Regina and District Dental Society and the Saskatchewan Dental Therapist Association. Can I have someone move a motion to receive and file communication CP 21-27? Councillor Hawkins, and sorry, CP 21-28, Councillor Hawkins, you're moving as well. And I need a seconder to receive these written submissions. Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none. We shall get to our delegations now on motion 21-7, which is Community Water Fluoridation Program. Out of the gates, I have Dr. Lanray Madu from the Regina Public Health, Saskatchewan Health Authority. I would like to call upon you, Dr. Madu, to please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question that members of Council may have for you. Good afternoon, Dr. Madu.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me, please?
We can, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. My name is... I'm one of the medical health officers working with the Saskatchewan Health Authority out of the Regina office today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak before council today, and I'd like to provide some evidence about the positive effects of community water fluoridation. First, I would like to congratulate council for bringing this forward and making the population's health a priority, thus aligning the city with some of the best preventive dental health public health practices. By way of an introduction, fluoride is a form of fluorine which occurs naturally, and it's widely distributed. It's a widely distributed element. It's a widely distributed element. Fluorides are a natural component of the Earth's crust, and small amounts of fluoride are present in water, air, plants, and animals. Fluoride, how does it work in impacting dental health? It works in 3 ways to prevent tooth decay. The first is through its ability to prevent or delay the loss of minerals from the teeth. Secondly, it reverses the loss of these minerals. And the third way it acts is by hindering the ability of bacteria to produce acids which are harmful to teeth, thus limiting the ability of this bacteria to stick to tooth surfaces, resulting in decay. Fluoride's use in drinking water, in terms of one of public health intervention, ranks as one of the most significant events in the past century. And the addition of fluoride to public water systems has significantly reduced tooth decay rates. Community water fluoridation is a practical and cost-effective and equitable intervention which is aimed at reducing rates of tooth decay and the associated adverse effects on health and well-being. As an example, caries-associated infections can cause pain and discomfort, and it also results in reduction of food intake because eating becomes a painful exercise. Severe caries have also been shown to impact adversely children's quality of life and their growth, with the pain that cause it also is associated with some irritability, disrupt sleeping habits, and other adverse growth impacts. Um, Fluoride used in municipal systems, this began back in around the 1940s, and as a public health measure, it's widely endorsed by a range of professional organizations, including the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control, the Canadian Medical Association, the Canadian Public Health Association. Closer home in Saskatchewan, there is also support for community water fluoridation. This support has been provided by the College of Dental Surgeons of Saskatchewan, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Saskatchewan, and the respective associations of dental assistants, hygienists, and therapists, among others. The Saskatchewan Ministry of Health and the body of medical health officers who work with the Saskatchewan Health Authority have also supported community water fluoridation, particularly at the Health Canada recommended level of 0.7 milligrams per liter. This is considered the optimum target concentration for fluoride in drinking water. The benefit of fluoride has been detailed in a recent review, and the reference is included in the submission that we made to Council, highlighting a number of benefits of community water fluoridation, primarily looking at tooth decay reduction. Early studies from the 1940s through the 1960s, which included the original trials in Brantford, Ontario, showed strong effects of community water fluoridation. More recently, in Calgary, where community water fluoridation was discontinued in 2011, there was an adverse effect observed resulting in increased tooth decay in second-grade children about 2 to 3 years after the cessation relative to the city of Edmonton, where water fluoridation continued. The study found that more cavities were seen in children in both cities. However, in Calgary, the number of tooth surfaces with decay increased by almost 4, that's 3.8 during the study relative to 2.1. So almost a doubling of the rate of the increase in surfaces in Calgary relative to Edmonton. Closer home in Saskatchewan, we also see a difference in cavity rates between communities where there is water fluoridation, resulting in lower cavity rates and healthier teeth in Saskatchewan communities with water fluoridation relative to those that do not have. As an example, Saskatchewan communities with fluoride with fluoridated water systems had higher proportion of carie-free, permanent, and primary teeth than those without fluoride, resulting in about 81% in fluoridated communities, really compared to 76.6%, and 62. And the difference was closer looking at children who were 12 years of age at 62.9% rate compared to 61.2. Similarly, international evidence also demonstrates that community water fluoridation prevents tooth decay. Allied to reduction in tooth decay, secondary benefit on the health outcomes, which result in improved overall health of children because of the reduced dental health needs, improved school performance, and the other piece to it is that the prevention of tooth decay is not only limited to children, it also extends into adulthood. So it's not an intervention that is dedicated solely to children. It affects the entire life course. At a population level, community water fluoridation is a public health measure which benefits people of all ages. It also does not, because it's added into water, it's a passive initiative which does not rely on individuals' compliance, and it also addresses other socioeconomic barriers. So those barriers around compliance or limited access are addressed, thereby addressing the inequities. Community water fluoridation, I must add, is a safe intervention, and it is supported by evidence. There is no evidence of increased risk of adverse health outcomes, including bone cancer, kidney disease, fluoride toxicity, thyroid suppression, or congenital disabilities are some of the things which have been studied and for which no evidence have been found. There is also an economic benefit to community water fluoridation, resulting in, at a minimum, a general cost savings. For example, a recent review shows for a Canadian municipality which do not have community water fluoridation, subsequent to its introduction, it was less costly after the introduction of community water fluoridation, it was less costly than when community water fluoridation was not provided. Additionally, the community water fluoridation introduction, the cost, the sunken cost for community water fluoridation is typically recovered within the first year of the initiative. And the review highlighted that the cost savings to be had ranged from about $1 for each dollar spent to as high as $135 for each dollar invested. Um, Speaking about some adverse outcomes, there are concerns about adverse outcomes related to fluoride. However, as I noted earlier, there has not been any association found between community water fluoridation and some of these outcomes, including a recent analysis which showed that um, there was no association between cancer incidence, neurotoxicity, increased mortality, or even hip fracture. Uh, in in cases where there is excessive fluoride exposure, which typically occurs when there's exposure from multiple sources, a condition known as fluorosis has been reported. In its mildest form, dental fluorosis consists of white filamentous striation across the crowns of the teeth, and at its most severe forms, it's resulting in some brownish discoloration of the teeth. At the recommended community water fluoridation level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, this is not expected to occur. So that would not be a concern in this instance, but we just felt it was worth mentioning. When water is fluoridated at the recommended level of at the recommended level, the resultant effluent does not reach the resultant effluent into community water bodies does not reach the levels that could harm plants or animal species. Therefore, fluoridation of public water systems is also safe for the environment while also beneficial to the people. Finally, we do appreciate the opportunity to speak before Council today and reiterate our support for the proposed community water fluoridation in Regina. Thanks again for the opportunity to provide this input. Please, we'll be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Madu. I do have questions from council for you. Councillor Zakidniak.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I do have a couple of questions through the chair. I understand that for anyone who does not wish to have fluoride in their water, that they can access, that they can purchase some, that there's water filters that they're able to purchase. Are you able to provide some additional information about those options for folks?
Certainly, thank you so much for the question. Filtration is one of those options to be. Ultrafiltration is one of those measures that can remove fluoride from water for those who wish not to have fluoride in water. At a population level, I don't have information as to jurisdictions that have implemented it, but certainly it is a technique that can be deployed. So if it does come to that, and I would imagine that would be contingent on what proportion of people do not want fluoride in water, and providing that as an option for them would be an intervention to consider. But yes, to answer, it's an option that can be used.
Okay, thank you. And I do have one more question. So if scientific evidence against fluoridation becomes more prevalent, can the SHA commit to alerting City Council and administration if the Sask Health Authority is no longer confident in recommending community water fluoridation? So just wanting to know if you folks would, if scientific evidence changes, if you would be willing to if there's mechanisms in place to alert us if your recommendations would change.
Yes, and I think that generally across health, if there is anything, if at any point where there is any evidence of harm that is identified in any population health intervention or medical intervention, and once the body of evidence does change, it will be incumbent on us to notify our partners and the community whom we serve about revisions and updates to the state of knowledge. But at this time, we haven't seen that just yet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Councillor Stevens.
Great, thank you. You've gone through about 70 years of research in a couple of minutes, so I was struggling to catch up here. You did identify reasons why people would oppose fluoridation, and so you countered some of those studies. So I was wondering if you perhaps could go through them. Just to clarify, is it correct to say that there are some potential health consequences with consuming fluoride, but it would have to be at such high levels, far beyond what we're proposing here, for it to have effect? If you could just clarify why there would be opposition and what the studies have concluded in terms of the negative health effects of fluoride.
Thank you very much. I think one of the commonest adverse events of fluoride is the dental fluorosis, and dental fluorosis is that staining of the teeth. But typically, it does occur when you have instances where there are multiple sources of fluoride, or in some instances where you have communities which have high fluoride levels naturally occurring in their water. What is being proposed here is addition of fluoride to municipal water at the recommended level. Taking a step back a few years ago, it was at a range. It was a range previously of 0.7 to 1.5 milligrams per liter. Now it has become, because accounting for all the other sources from where fluoride has come, 0.7 milligrams per liter is the optimum level at which fluoride should be provided. And at that level, it has not been found that there is any adverse effect to the health of people and the environment. Certainly, if it's taken at higher concentrations, which in those instances I'm not aware has been studied, because there are communities that have natural fluoride levels at levels much higher than even 1.5, and differential adverse outcomes have not been really observed in those settings. So at this time, I am speaking to target the optimum level at which point it is safe and no adverse outcomes are noted.
Thank you. Another follow-up. What would you say to opponents of fluoridation who suggest, we're getting it from toothpaste, we're getting it from mouthwash, we might be actually ingesting it from other sources? Is it correct that that would accumulate in your body, or still, even given all of those other sources of ingestion, at the levels we're proposing here, we're not going to see the negative health effects that some are proposing? Is that correct?
Well, I think maybe a way to look at it is if we looked at the evidence from Calgary, and the evidence from Calgary and Edmonton, in which case you would almost argue, I would consider it is very similar. The dental health practices is perhaps similar across both areas. But one community discontinued fluoride, and it was observed that there was an increase in dental caries rate. The natural sources also remain, so it does show that community water fluoridation does play a role. The other part is not everybody has the best best oral hygiene. In some instances, it may be it's just personal habits. In some instances, it's socioeconomic. Because of, if we are community water fluoridation as an initiative, it takes care of that barrier, it addresses that barrier, and it essentially levels the field for everybody. So that is one of the reasons why we think other sources would not sufficiently compensate for water fluoridation to prevent to decay.
Okay, thank you very much. My final question. Others have proposed, instead of spending this on, basically a universal fluoridation process, instead we would spend the money on, public health outreach. We would distribute information about oral hygiene. We'd distribute toothpaste, whatever. In terms of balancing what has the best effects, is it correct to say that this is actually a policy and a program that would have better outcomes than the alternatives if we were to spend the money in different ways?
I think without a doubt, and looking at the evidence of cost savings for community water fluoridation, it ranged from $1 for $1 spent, and which was essentially a cost recovery, to $135 for every dollar spent. Granted, the $135 was from a New Zealand study, but when we looked at a study closer to home, there was a Quebec study in there which had about $87 benefit for every dollar spent. I would consider that it is hard to find any other intervention that will provide that return on investment. So I think community water fluoridation provides an opportunity that provides the best value for money in terms of improving dental health. The other thing though is the additional measures which you propose, they are good measures, no doubt, but I think they rely on a number of things. It is contingent on the level of health literacy of the population for which is targeted. It is contingent on compliance of the persons for which it is going to be delivered to. The modes of delivery have to be figured out. Community water fluoridation takes away and addresses a whole lot of those barriers, at which point it's no longer, it's a high yield investment, if I would put it that way.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Mole.
Thank you for your speech, Doctor. I have a few questions for you. Just curious, what chemical compound is used to fluoridate most communities in North America?
I don't have that information pretty much at this point, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay, I'll probably ask the one of city staff. Maybe I'll ask you this one. Do humans need fluoride?
Okay, so here is what I would say. Fluoride in this instance, it does work it's a naturally occurring element. So humans are exposed to fluoride naturally at any rate. There is a differential in areas that some areas have and some areas do not. So if I were to go along the lines of the question, the humans need fluoride. Humans are already exposed to fluoride naturally in some areas, and there is benefit to it to the extent that we would add it. The other thing which I would ask, which is perhaps a rhetorical question, is there are other instances where we have fortified foods, and so you have iodine in salt, you have folic acid in flour, you have folic acid in juices. So those elements are also used because there is benefit to them. They provide benefits to human health in various forms. In this case, fluoride has dental health benefits. So to that extent, to answer your question in its most direct form, I would say yes, it is beneficial, and if we're able to provide it, it would be needed. It should be supported.
Okay, thank you. Just curious, there's a future delegate here speaking, Janelle Gerard. Have you read her research that she's about to present?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. No, thank you.
But I'll be happy to read that.
Okay, my last and final question. Before council started, I wish I could share this with my colleagues. I have a letter here from Health Canada. So it does date back a few years. Has there been any toxicology and clinical tests relating to hydrofluoric acid in Canadian tap water?
Okay, I am not aware of that, but if I do recall, I think so. This may speak to a study which came out about 2 years ago out of York University, which spoke about hydrofluoric acid, and also there's quite a fair bit of publications on it in the U.S., in some U.S. studies. And I do think that hydrofluoric acid, in this instance, you're talking about quantity. So as a chemical compound in and of itself, yes, there may be harms, but we're talking about the quantity of 0.7 milligrams per liter. The York study, which similarly suggested that there were neurotoxic effects associated with fluoride, that study had some significant issues with that. And I am happy to provide a response to that, but because I have read that paper at one time, but I don't quite have all the details. But the study design for what it was decided to use there were some significant concerns with that. So to the extent that the conclusions that were drawn were flawed based on the research approach that was used. But I'm happy to discuss further about that study if that is what I think you are speaking to.
When was this study performed?
The York study was a study that was published in 2019, I believe.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mole. Councillor Stadnichuk.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through the chair, thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask you about the health impacts of tooth decay, of having a high level of tooth cavities. You mention in your report that the quality of life, eating foods is painful, irritability, disturbed sleeping habits, and adverse growth impacts. I understand that it can also create heart disease. Is that true? Are there other health impacts of poor oral health?
So I think as a direct connection, perhaps not, but there is a compound effect of, if you have poor oral health, you have poor hygiene, the extension means, okay, well, there is perhaps the individual may have a less competent immune system. All of this, when you look at the combined picture, may suggest that, okay, well, there are different various adverse health outcomes, some of which may involve heart-related complications. But for a clinical component here, I would defer to the dental health, mental health specialist, who I believe is also speaking to, who will be able to provide more details in that regard.
Okay, thank you. I have some other questions, but I think that they might be more appropriate to the other representative of the Saskatchewan Health Authority, so I'm going to hold them. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor, I know you had sent a couple questions, and I'm happy to respond to. There are a couple which are more appropriate to the clinical folks, but there are a couple which I think we as public health are able to speak to. In particular, you had requested about comparing dental decay in communities that fluoridated versus those that did not. We took a look at our data, and looking at data from 2008 and 2013, aggregated by the former regional health authorities at the time. Former Saskatoon Health Region reported about 51% case, 51% and 47% respectively, for children in grade 1A children who had never experienced tooth decay. Across the same time periods in Regina reported 43% and 39% who had never experienced tooth decay. So that's about an 8 to 9% difference in tooth decay in Saskatchewan and what was former Regina Capel Health Authority, Health Region. Over the same period, the proportion of children who had unmet dental treatment needs in the Regina area was about 32%, relative to about 19% in what was former Saskatoon. And that also speaks to the benefit, to the fact that education in and of itself and other measures may not be sufficient to bridge the gap that community water fluoridation would address in preventing and reducing the rates of dental decay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions from council, I will thank you very much again for your presentation this afternoon, Dr. Medieu, and ask that you now leave the meeting.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to call upon delegation Jerry Uswak from the University of Saskatchewan College of Dentistry. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question members of Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can, sir.
Perfect. I am Jerry Iswak. I am the Registrar of the College of Dental Surgeons of Saskatchewan. I am the referral consultant dentist for the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and I am a Associate Professor of Dental Public Health at the University of Saskatchewan College of Dentistry. And I'm representing the Saskatchewan Health Authority, the College of Dental Surgeons of Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Dental Hygiene Association, the Saskatchewan Dental Assistants Association, the Saskatchewan Dental Therapists Association, and the Dentura Society of Saskatchewan, and I'm calling from Saskatoon. Your Worship, Mayor, and Councillors, this is a statement of support for the proposal to fluoridate Regina's community water system from 6 organizations whose primary mandate is to protect the public, and part of that public protection includes supporting safe, effective, and efficient population-based dental public health interventions, which is exactly what community water fluoridation is. Community water fluoridation is endorsed globally by dental and non-dental organizations, from the World Health Organization all the way down to the organizations that I'm representing here today. No credible dental organization does not support community water fluoridation as an effective preventive modality for dental cavities. Community water fluoridation is effective. This was first seen when the community water fluoridation trials began in 1945 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, then carried on to other communities, including communities in Canada. After 11 years of the Grand Rapids fluoride trial, which was the amount of time it took for children born after the community water fluoridation started to receive the benefits of it, there was a 60% decrease in the dental caries rates in those who consumed fluoridated water versus the communities that did not. Research over the decades, almost 75 years, have shown that it continues to be effective even with fluorides from different sources. The contemporary projection is that, all things considered equal, there is still a 25 to 30% prevention of dental decay rates in our communities. The fact is that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention called community water fluoridation one of the top 10 greatest public health initiatives ever. That's not dental public health, that is all public health initiatives, and included in this list there are vaccinations, motor vehicle safety, healthy moms and babies, the recognition of the dangers of tobacco, control of infectious diseases. So this is a massive, successful endeavor that has been delivered safely for 75 odd years. We also know that in Saskatchewan there is a statistically significant difference in the decay rate in unfluoridated versus fluoridated communities, and this has been documented by the Saskatchewan Health Authority's regular 5-year research surveys. We also know that community water fluoridation is safe, right? The original fluoridation studies continue to examine the health of the generations of people since community water fluoridation started. So there are regular examinations in Grand Rapids and Kingston and Newburgh, and there are no deleterious effects of community water fluoridation. This has been confirmed by national reviews in Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, and there is no credible link between community water fluoridation and any systemic diseases. Fluoride is one of the most abundant minerals in the soil and presents in varying amounts in potable water supplies, usually not to the level that prevents decay, and at the levels, and as a matter of fact, we reduced the level we fluoridate community water systems at from 1.2 parts per million to 0.7 to continue the benefit of cavity prevention while monitoring to make sure that people do not become over-fluoridated. The Canadian Health Measures Survey that was done in 2007-2009 could not find enough significant dental fluorosis, which is fluoride-induced changes to enamel, to even statistically report on it in their report. So the Canadian population certainly is not suffering from being over-fluoridated due to community water fluoridation. Community water fluoridation is cost-effective at $1 per person per year. That's 8 times cheaper than if a government were to distribute toothbrushes and toothpaste to the population, and significantly cheaper than having to treat a cavity, which would cost $100 in private practice. Community water fluoridation assures health equity in that the most vulnerable population or segments of our population suffer the most serious disease risk and disease experience when it comes to dental decay, and community water fluoridation may be their only preventive modality that they experience because they can't seek care in dental public health or private practice. So it is a great equalizer for those people who cannot make a demand on the healthcare system. Community water fluoridation is politically charged because we're balancing providing for the entire population as a patient versus individuals not having the choice to drink fluoridated water or not. We fully recognize this, but the benefits of community water fluoridation fully outweigh someone's desire not to drink community water fluoridation from their taps. And in closing, community water fluoridation is the right choice for Regina, and that is why the Saskatchewan Oral Health Professionals Group and the Saskatchewan Health Authority endorse Regina's proposal to fluoridate their community water system. I thank you for your time, and I will answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usak. Members of council, I have Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned the absence of evidence of the opposing view, so there's an absence of evidence of fluoride causing health concerns. I just want to ask you about 2 sets of studies that one of our delegates brought to our attention and ask if you're aware of them and to respond to it. So the first set is Bashash et al. There's a 2017 study, prenatal fluoride leads to lower IQ scores in children, and prenatal fluoride leads to increased ADHD and inattention in children. Are you aware of that set of studies, and can you give us any context to it?
Yes, I'm aware of those studies and the subsequent ones because there were initial ones that were done in Mexico, and then there was a more recent one that was done in Canada. As a matter of fact, when those results were published, the dental public health research community became quite concerned by what was inferred by the results from these studies, and reviewed the data set and came to the conclusion that the initial studies were linked to women who had fluoride exposure well above what we fluoridate at. So we're talking about water systems of 2 parts per million and up to 4 parts per million, where we only fluoridate at 0.7 parts per million. So, the context is, at certain fluoride levels, certainly at 14 parts per million, we can have skeletal fluorosis and bending of bone. But that's due to naturally occurring groundwater, fluoride in groundwater, or environmental contamination from industry. The subsequent papers that were done in Canada, again, the authors inferred too much, and after the review, scaled back on their linking intellectual deficits to community water fluoridation. So that's the context that I understand from the work that was done by the dental public health research community in the United States and Canada with respect to those series of studies.
Thank you. And then just one follow-up question. So there's one by Till et al. 2020 study. Essentially, babies that drank formula made with fluoridated water was associated with diminished nonverbal intellectual abilities. Can you tell us anything about that study?
We have, in dental public health, we have recommended that formula not be reconstituted with fluoridated water for the simple fact that we wanted, in part of trying to provide good stewardship on the total amount of fluoride that is taken in from all sources. That was one of the reasons why we reduced 1 part per million to 0.7 parts per million, to understand that we're getting fluoride from toothpaste. People choose to use mouth rinses, whether it's recommended or not. Convenience foods made with fluoridated water. We look at the complete burden, body burden of fluoride from all sources, so that's why the recommendation is we only fluoridate at 0.7 parts per million, and we don't recommend the reconstitution of baby formula with fluoridated water. I mean, in the past there was a difference between milk-based formulas and soy-based formulas, and say soy-based formulas had higher naturally occurring levels of fluoride. So we pay attention to all of these things. Currently, the belief is that there is no credible series of evidence. There's no systematic reviews of looking at the overall amount of research to suggest that the level of fluoridation that we currently use has any impact on intellectual development.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Moll.
To present, just curious, so the Lancet Medical Journal classifies fluoride as a neurotoxin. Why would we put something classified as a neurotoxin into our city water?
In World War I, chlorine gas was used to kill the enemy. So why would we put chlorine in our water systems to purify it?
Thank you for that.
I mean, it's a matter of degrees and it's a matter of concentration. There is no evidence that at 0.7 parts per million, and for that matter at 1.0 or 1.2 parts per million, that community water fluoridation has any deleterious effect on the neurological systems.
Okay, so you're confident the city will be able to regulate the dosage of every citizen in Regina?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
You're confident that the city will be able to regulate the dosage of every citizen in Regina?
Well, the city, with a brand new water treatment plant and trained water treatment plant operator, can regulate the fluoride concentration in the drinking water system to 0.7 parts per million, and within the larger window that Health Canada has established for safe tolerances of fluoride in drinking water, yes.
Okay. I was interested to hear about the baby formula. I guess I'm not too sure how the residents will be able to get unfluoridated water afterwards for the baby formula, but can too much fluoride damage kids' teeth?
It can. So fluorosis is fluoride damage. It alters the development of fluoride, and what we see typically, and the grading of fluorosis ranges from very mild to moderate to severe. When the whole concept or the idea of fluoride in water was first discovered at the turn of the century, circa 1910, by Dr. McKay in Colorado, it was called Colorado brown stain because we had a population where dental decay was endemic, yet in this subgroup in a couple of Colorado cities, there was no decay, but the people had these really brown stained teeth. Well, that was fluorosis, and fluoride caused that fluorosis, but fluoride prevented that disease. And then subsequently, that Colorado brown stain, when they figured out how much fluoride was in that drinking water system that occurred naturally, it was 12 parts per million. and we're talking about fluoridating at 0.7 parts per million. I refer back to the Canadian Health Measures survey, which was a nationwide survey of clinical health and dental exams on a composite of the Canadian population. What they found was 60% of kids 6 to 12 years old in Canada from that survey had normal enamel. Another 24% had lesions that could be fluorosis, but could be some other white lesion. So it was equivocal. And then another small percentage had very mild fluorosis, and then less than about, I think it was about 4% had mild fluorosis. But the cutoff for a significant dental public health problem and from a cosmetic point of view, moderate fluorosis, there was not enough moderate fluorosis found in the Canadian population of 6 to 12-year-olds to even report on it statistically. So yes, it can, and all sources of fluoride can. I mean, the biggest risk for dental fluorosis is children swallowing fluoridated toothpaste, not community water fluoridation.
Yes, thank you very much for that answer. I'm well aware of fluorosis. The lady that started the petition against adding fluoride to the water has fluorosis. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Moll. Councillor Stanachek.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Thank you so much for coming today. Through you, Mayor Masters, a question about, is it possible to be allergic to fluoride? This was a concern that was raised to me, and the person admitted that they weren't sure if, their dentist wasn't sure if they were actually allergic to the fluoride or the additive in the fluoride. Is it possible, and if it is possible, then what precautions should people take? If
well, I've never heard or read about being allergic to fluoride, especially in potable water systems. One would think that, I mean, if we're looking at, so if we look at community water fluoridation is 0.7 parts per million. If you look at the toothpaste that one uses that is fluoridated, that's 1,000 parts per million. So that individual who's allergic to fluoride would have to never drink fluoridated water, never use fluoridated toothpaste, never get fluoride at their dental clinic, and avoid all convenience foods because there are convenience food and drink that is made with fluoridated water. So, it's hard to completely avoid fluoride in the environment, and there's fluoride, in a variety of sources. So I've never heard of an allergy to fluoride, especially community water fluoridation.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Stanachek. Seeing no further questions, I'll thank you again very much, Dr. Uswak, for your presentation this afternoon, taking the time, and I'd ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Kelly Fuchs to please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you will have the opportunity to respond to any questions that members of Council may have for you. Good afternoon. Kelly Fuchs? You're on mute now. You'll have to unmute yourself.
This is Kelly.
Ms. Fuchs, are you available?
Yes, can you hear me?
Can now, yes. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Fuchs. I'm a senior health educator with the Oral Health Program for the Saskatchewan Health Authority in the Regina urban area. The implementation of fluoridation of the municipal water system in Regina would provide all residents, especially our most vulnerable, with an effective and equitable approach to helping prevent dental decay. In all communities and neighborhoods, we see children with mouths full of cavities and abscesses. They're living with pain, it's been left unattended, and in many cases, it's left unattended for years. Due to their debilitating oral health, these children suffer due to poor nourishment because they have difficulty chewing when their mouths are in pain. Many lack sleep due to the pain that they are experiencing in their mouth. Poor oral health can result in inadequate nutrition, resulting in poor brain function and potentially many missed days of school. Many of these children will end up having their dental treatment completed before the age of 5 in the hospital under general anesthetic. Children under the age of 5 going to the hospital for general anesthetic. Many have all their teeth extracted or restored with numerous crowns and nerve treatments. Many of the families can't afford the dental treatments, so the children continue to suffer. Small children often will awaken from surgery in pain, and often they're left without any teeth until their permanent teeth erupt, which, as we know, is between age 6 and completing around age 12. Poor self-esteem, speech difficulties, and crowded teeth are all issues that can follow. A 2011-2012 report from the Canadian Institute of Health Information shows the former Regina Health Region accounted for 317 surgeries in Saskatchewan for children under the age of 5 years of age that were suffering with early childhood caries. This did not take into account the surgeries that are also performed in private clinics in Regina. These surgeries come at a cost of approximately $1,700 per surgery. Tooth decay is something that is completely preventable, and we can help to prevent it. Another screening, a 2018-19 screening in the province, showed clear evidence that communities with non-fluoridated water versus fluoridated water had a significantly higher rate of tooth decay on only 2 age groups. So children age 6 had about 5.5% more cavities, and the 12-year-old age group had 4% more cavities than children in our neighboring city of Saskatoon. So this might not seem like much, but this is real data on only 2 age groups. We know if every age had an average of even 4% reduction in cavities, this would equate to a significant reduction in tooth decay for the Regina population, and with fewer cavities, a reduction in future infection and pain. This reduces the number of people going to emergency rooms with oral pain and infection, and would reduce the number of children experiencing dental treatment under general anesthesia. Older adults and seniors experience similar cavity, have similar cavity experiences. Adults are keeping their teeth longer, and the majority are keeping them even for life. This increased retention of teeth means that more adults are at risk for cavities. More residents are going into long-term care with their natural teeth and with extensive dental work, such as crowns, bridges, and implants. And they've maintained this oral health over the years, over the decades, with many investing thousands of dollars for good oral health. So they, too, would benefit greatly from the additional fluoride. Tooth decay can negatively affect an individual's quality of life and ability to thrive. Tooth decay can cause pain and infection. Water fluoridation has been around and safely used since the 1940s. Community water fluoridation protects the oral and overall health of communities. Can we set our city up for better oral health outcomes by providing a safe and scientifically valid measure for fluoridating our water? It's simple. Cavities are preventable, and fluoridation prevents cavities. This makes fluoridation a wise choice for healthy people, healthy Saskatchewan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly Fuchs. I'm going to turn this over to Councillor Stadnichuk, has some questions for you.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Sure. Thank you so much for your presentation. I did miss the stat that you provided when you were comparing Regina, the rate of tooth decay in kids in Regina versus Saskatoon. Could you repeat that?
In Regina, the screening, the dental screening from 2018-19 showed that 6-year-old children had 5.5% more cavities in Regina than in Saskatoon, and 12-year-old children had 4% more cavities in Regina than children in Saskatoon. So this was just 2 age groups that were screened.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You did also talk about the rate of the number of children referred for dental surgery. the, do you have any additional statistics in terms of, that was just in the public system, and I do know that the private clinics here had been referred, had dental surgery also referred to them, children dental surgery referred to them. So it was so serious that the government contracted that work to private clinics to get rid of the backlog. Can you provide any more information about those numbers or any other information?
I don't have those numbers. I'm unsure if possibly Dr. Uzak or Dr. Madu would be able to produce those. I can't give you an exact number.
Okay. Are you aware of if dental surgery for children is an issue in Saskatoon where their water is already fluoride?
Dental surgery, there are high numbers of dental surgery in children, I think across the country. I'm not sure what Saskatoon's numbers are.
Okay, thank you. And so the cost you said was $1,700 per dental surgery. So even with just the 317 surgeries that you mentioned for those under the age of 5, and we know there's probably more, that's a cost of almost $540,000.
Per year.
Yeah, so I imagine that the numbers could be quite high if we knew that. Do you believe that the addition of fluoride in Regina's water would reduce the number of cavities among children, among newcomers, and thereby reduce the amount that would be referred to for dental surgery?
I do. I 100% absolutely believe that. We've had, as you said, we've had large numbers of newcomers to our city in the past 10 years. And in the work that we do, we're primarily seeing children under the age of 5, and on a regular basis, we are seeing children suffer for years with dental decay. And I think putting fluoride in the water is going to give them the best opportunity to improve their decay rates. It's hard. It's really difficult to teach new behaviors for people to really grasp that and take control and responsibility of their oral health. But unfortunately, as I said, it leads to these children having poor self-esteem if they've had all their teeth removed. They're not having proper brain function in school because they're not sleeping well. If they've had pain in their mouth all night, and they just continue to suffer. So it's really sad.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Councillor Moll.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I'm going to ask you similar questions that I asked Dr. Madu. I'm not too sure if you have any different answers. Do you know what chemical compound is used to fluoridate most communities in North America?
I don't. I think Dr. Uzak would have the best answer for that.
Okay, I should have asked him. Do humans need fluoride?
Do they need it? I think it certainly prevents a lot of, I guess I could say that the fluoride definitely paves the way for a healthier being, for each individual and to cover an entire population. As you've heard in the last 3 presentations, if you don't have healthy teeth, you're not eating well. You're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you're not having proper brain function, you're malnourished, which leads to, other different types of health issues. So I do think that fluoride is important and definitely needed here.
I do agree with you. Clearly, there's not enough education for dental hygiene out there. So how much does someone need to drink each day if water was in the fluoride? Fluoride is in the water.
Well, it's, the optimal amount is the 0.7 milligrams per liter, which at that level accounts for additional fluoride being taken in, such as toothpaste, fluoride varnish, fluoride mouth rinses, and eating foods that are prepared with fluoridated water. So, that 0.7 is lower than it has been previously, and that amount to take into consideration all the other opportunities to have fluoride. But
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you, again, the same question as Dr. Madu. So I referred to a Health Canada Freedom of Information request out of Ottawa here in regards to toxicological and clinical tests relating to hydrofluorosilicic acid in Canadian tap water. They stated that no records were available of any such tests. Then Dr. Madu referred to the York University study. I just read an article that York University study was debunked already. So are you aware of any clinical or toxicological tests being done?
I am not.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Moll. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you. Just through you, Mayor Masters, just one question, Kelly, in regards to your experience in, we've talked about the financial, of course, savings in this regard, but also I think I've experienced this, is the trauma to the children that have to be put under for this type of dental work. I've seen it firsthand and it's not pretty. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of a workup before they can get in. There's lots of paperwork, some pre-op, and so they're going into the hospital or to the private clinic. They're in pain. Many of them have never been to the dentist, so I mean, just going to the dental office on its own is frightening for them. Sometimes, they have difficulty with transportation just to get them there. So they're there. I'm not quite sure how long they're under anesthetic, but there are risks involved in any surgery to anyone that's under anesthetic, but they're under anesthetic. They have, they can often have even all of their primary teeth removed in that one appointment. They're often having crowns, root canals done. And so they're waking up, they're groggy, they're uncomfortable, and now they are having to learn how to eat and how to speak. Some of them, have difficulty speaking after because they don't have those teeth to push their tongue up against to, pronounce proper words. And then there's the recovery period. So it's not fun for them. It's difficult for the parents as well, for everybody involved, as well as the financial aspect.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Shaw.
Hi, I just have one quick question. I'm not sure if you can answer this with the information that I'm going to give you because it's very vague. But I remember when my children were younger and the dentist, when they brushed their teeth, they went to the dentist, but the dentist had recommended that I put fluoride in their milk or in their water or juice or whatever that they drank in the morning. Can you tell me, would you happen to know, and I don't remember if I bought the pill at the grocery store, at the drugstore, or if he prescribed it, but do you have any idea of the comparison between that, what he recommended I give to my children, to what we see that we're going to be putting into our Regina City water if this goes through you, Mayor Masters?
I'm not familiar with what the amount of fluoride is. I know that, fluoride chews or drops are available at the pharmacy. They're behind the counter. You can't just pick them up. You have to ask for them. Okay. And I do know that on the packaging, though, it will tell by weight or by age of the child how many drops per day or how many chews they would have per day. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I understand that a lot of people do use them with children, really, really young to help reduce tooth decay. And because we don't have that addition of that optimal amount of fluoride in the water, so, I don't know the amount in the chews or the drops. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, I am familiar with people using that.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Seeing no further questions, I'll thank you very much, Ms. Fuchs, for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Jim Elliott. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you are representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you will have the opportunity to respond to any question that members of Council may have for you. Good afternoon, Mr. Elliott.
Good afternoon.
Please proceed.
Okay, my name is Jim Elliott. I'm a resident of Regina, and therefore I'm representing myself. My concerns with the fluoridation option that the City Council is considering today is twofold. First of all, putting fluoride in Regina's drinking water is wasting, in my estimations, about $180,000 a year. Second of all, right now there's no information that I've heard or seen to say that Moose Jaw's drinking water is in fact helping in the questions around tooth decay. First point, I've put in a graph to illustrate that about 30% or approximately 30% of water use doesn't actually get into the household, and of that 70% that's left, only about 19%, or in an overall sense about 13%, gets to the tap for use by the residents. So basically that means that 87% of the water that comes to the household doesn't in fact even get to the point of being drunk by the resident, or the fluoride getting into the resident. And so therefore we're essentially putting a lot of fluoride into watering our lawns, flushing our toilets, cleaning our clothes, and various other uses around the household. Now, estimating, as I said, that 100% of our water was going to the faucet, we're basically wasting about $180,000 of that fluoride because it's not getting to its intended use. And so essentially it's going down the drain. Now, if all the water coming from Buffalo Pound Lake was to be used for residential use, that would be the end of the waste. But of course, it doesn't. There's several industrial users who take water from the pipeline. There's also communities along the way that also take water, and I'm not sure whether they've been asked or even have the ability to refuse the fluoridation that you're proposing. And additionally, water coming into Regina is also going to businesses, stores, commercial operations like car washes. So in a general sense, very little would ever get to be used for drinking purposes. And likewise, even with restaurants, much of that water is being used for toilets, dishwashers, etc., and not getting into the customers of that restaurant. So, as I said, Regina is considering wasting money for this proposed action, and I thought mayor and council were elected because they said they wouldn't be saving residents money, not wasting it. My second point is the use of fluoride in Moose Jaw water has no known benefits. Now, we've had some general comments about Saskatchewan, so Moose Jaw has been fluoridating its water. And we've got the perfect definitive testable hypothesis as to whether the fluoride actually helps residents in Moose Jaw and not in Regina. And yet there's been no mention of any of this within the motion that you have before you. So and again, we have two cities adjacent to each other using the same water, one with fluoride, one without, and conceivably the same dental programs, and yet we should be able to tell whether the fluoride in Moose Jaw is helping them, and yet we've heard nothing from this discussion so far. So in my minds, or in the conclusions that I've made, and I think many other taxpayers, council is either wasting money and not basing their proposal on any local empirical proof that the fluoride going into this city's water will do any benefit. And as I said, that's not what I voted for in November in 2020. And so as I said, my recommendation is that Regina not fluoridate its water coming out of Buffalo Pound Lake. And I'll conclude at that point and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. Any questions from council? Councillor Moll.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Yeah, I never really thought about this before until I read your information. It sounds like this could be a waste of taxpayers' money. I've heard that it's well over 90% plus of fluoridated water is wasted. Those are the numbers that you heard? I can't remember what percentage you said.
Well, the average numbers that I presented were about 87%, or thereabouts. Now, like I said, I don't have the ability to go into the commercial use of water in Regina as well as any of the users upstream from us to know whether that average of 87% is the same, or in fact it's higher than that in the sense of whether it's 90 or 95%, that type of thing. But
okay. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Mr. Elliott, we've heard this afternoon conclusive evidence of the effectiveness of fluoride in protecting children's teeth. We've also heard a terrible set of stories about children who are forced to go into the hospital to have their teeth removed, the pain and the suffering that they go through. Do you still maintain your position in light of that fluoridation is a waste of money?
Well, as I've stated in my presentation, we're wasting about 80 or perhaps as high as 90% of the money we're putting into the fluoride. I don't discount the fact that people are suffering from dental cavities and that type of thing, and that some of the stories that were presented to you are valid and appropriate. The only thing that I would say is that I'm not sure whether all of those dental cavities are related strictly to the lack of fluorine in water. And I suspect that if you looked at things around the social determinants of health, around income, around poverty, around racialized communities, I suspect there's probably more or that we could be saving those trips to the dental surgery as well by taking that effort rather than necessarily, as I said, wasting 80 to 90% of the money put into fluoridating water.
Those are my questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Shaw.
I just have a very simple question through you, Mayor Masters. Can I ask you, your statistics that you gave today and your opinion, can you please let us know how can you justify these statistics, and how do you justify what you said today based on what knowledge that you have through you, Mayor Masters?
Well, I guess, first of all, the numbers that I quoted to you and the graph that I presented or put into the presentation come from studies that were done across Canada and therefore are averages, so that it doesn't necessarily match up entirely with every individual city. So I suspect you could probably tell your administration or ask your administration as to what the actual percentage of water that goes into the residence actually gets used by the resident and not for all of the other uses that were part of the graph and what I presented to you. But even if it's less than that, I guess my recommendation would be I would be wanting to put that 180 or thereabouts, even if it's $150,000. I would think it would be better spent on getting the lead pipes out of our water system, because as lead is cumulative as well, and I think it would have or has had much more deleterious impacts on those that ingest lead as would be getting out of high fluoride levels or low fluoride levels.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Seeing no further questions from council, Mr. Elliott, I'll ask Thank you again very much for the presentation this afternoon, and ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Thank you.
Much for the presentation this afternoon, and ask that you please leave the meeting now. I would like to call upon Delegation Janelle Gerard. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question that members of Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So hello, councillors. My name is Janelle Gerard, and I am representing myself. One of the most important advancements in society has been the development of science as a means to pursue truth. With objectivity as a founding principle, the intention of science is to provide knowledge and disseminate the truth. The ultimate goal is to produce an evidence-informed society that benefits all of humanity. Unfortunately, as we know, this has not always been the case. As we look back in history, there is no shortage of examples of products that had initially been deemed safe and only years later were found to have catastrophic consequences. From DDT to asbestos to lead paint to cigarettes to thalidomide and Accutane, products that were all once heralded, approved by regulatory agencies, widely promoted, and deemed safe. The independent scientists who raised the alarm bells were often criticized and dismissed by industry, as Dr. Carson was when she released her groundbreaking book, Silent Spring, outlining the toxicity of the chemical DDT. Fast forward to today, and these remnants of history continue. Glyphosate, an agricultural chemical, has been deemed a human carcinogen by the World Health Organization. This is an assertion that has been supported by hundreds of independent scientific studies, and yet has been approved by Health Canada for use. I am here today as a very concerned citizen to present independent, scientific, peer-reviewed evidence outlining the adverse health effects of water fluoridation. Please note that I have sought the assistance and direction of Dr. Kathleen Thiessen, one of the world's top scientific experts on fluoride. Several of the studies referenced involve a Canadian cohort, and several of the authors are Canadian. Many of the studies were also supported by the U.S. National Institutes of Health. I should also note that each study called for future research to investigate these troubling relationships that they identified in their research. A study by Bischoff et al. 2017 found that prenatal fluoride exposure was associated with lower scores on tests of cognitive function in children and called for further research. Another study by Bischoff et al. 2018 found high levels of fluoride exposure during pregnancy was associated with ADHD and inattention in children. A study by Till et al. 2020 found that infants that consumed formula that was reconstituted with fluoridated water at the recommended level of 0.7 milligrams per liter, as outlined by Health Canada, was associated with diminished nonverbal intellectual abilities in those children. A peer-reviewed meta-analysis out of Harvard University found that there is an association between fluoride exposure and lower IQ scores in children and called for further research to investigate this relationship. Riddell et al. 2019 found that fluoride exposure in tap water is associated with an increased risk of ADHD among Canadian youth and called for further research. Please note that there are over 400 scientific studies outlining the adverse health effects of water fluoridation. I'm only presenting a tiny fraction of the evidence that exists. The main point here is that Canadian studies show the effects of neurotoxicity in fluoride levels routinely encountered by Canadians whose water is fluoridated at the recommended level. I'm incredibly concerned about the lack of consensus within the scientific community with regard to the safety of water fluoridation. It is also worth mentioning that 97% of Western Europe does not fluoridate their waters. With that, there's another piece to this in relation to ethical issues surrounding informed consent when it comes to adding a substance to an entire community's drinking water. Informed consent is the knowledge, understanding, and acceptance of the risks and benefits of a procedure or treatment. When fluoride is added to an entire community's drinking water, the public's right to informed consent is violated. Will City Council be providing water filtration systems to all citizens who do not consent to having a chemical compound added to their drinking water? I do not consent to having fluoride added to my drinking water. I do not consent to having fluoride added to my daughter's drinking water. We do not consent. Thank you so much for your time. Added to their drinking water.
Thank you, Ms. Gerard. Any questions from council for the delegate? Councillor Moll.
Thank you for your presentation, Janelle. You sound very educated on this topic. You mentioned the vast majority of Europe does not fluoridate their water. Can you provide any additional information as to why this is the case?
Yeah, so from what I've read so far in relation to this is that they have cited everything from concerns related to toxicity to safety concerns and ethical concerns as being the primary reasons for them to not fluoridate their citizens' water.
Okay, awesome. I might have missed it. You said something about 100 clinical studies or 100 studies. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah, so there's actually over 400 studies that have been done, albeit they're all, we're specifically looking at the 0.7 milligrams per liter. So, in order to, sift through those and go through those and look at studies specifically referring to that measurement, I think would be definitely important. And also something important, that I just want to touch on is in the studies that I have read and reviewed, all of the researchers are calling for further research into these troubling associations and these relationships between fluoride and these, neurotoxic effects that they're finding in these studies. I recall one counselor referenced Bashash et al., and I can't remember the speaker who addressed the question. They said that the levels in the specific studies were higher and they weren't associated, with 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is what we're kind of looking at here in relation to Canada. And it's interesting to know that there was another study done by Mallon and Till 2015 who used national health surveys conducted by the CDC to estimate the prevalence of ADHD and water fluoridation for each state. And they found that the greater proportion of people who had fluoridated drinking water had more children and adolescents to receive an ADHD diagnosis. So I want to emphasize that, yes, we have these existing studies and they're identifying these key areas, relationships and associations between neurotoxicity, and they're calling on more research to be done. So I really want to emphasize that point is that, if they're saying that, this study wasn't measuring the levels at 0.7 or anything like that, I think it's really important that more research needs to be done so that we can make an educated decision regarding what's being reported here in the existing studies that we do have.
Yes, very interesting information, and I agree more research does need to be done, as they keep citing the Health Canada letter with clinical tests regarding toxicology not being completed. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Seeing no further questions from council, I'm going to ask
Thank
a question.
you so much.
I'm going to ask you a question, Ms. Gerard.
Sure.
In your written submission and in some of your verbal submission today, you outlined the premise is that you produce an evidence-informed society that benefits humanity. The lead up to which is that products originally deemed safe later to be found catastrophic consequences. How do you reconcile the fact that you're speaking about a few hundred, apparently scientific studies, but name a couple, which have been spoken to already today. How do you reconcile the fact that you're referring to a science when the individuals or the organizations that are supporting this, and quite literally we have hundreds of doctor signatures, dentists and doctor signatures on file here in letters, with the Saskatchewan Health Authority, the College of Dental Surgeons of Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Dental Hygiene Association, the Saskatchewan Dental Assistants Association, the Saskatchewan Dental Therapists Association, the Denturist Society of Saskatchewan, and the College of Dental Surgeons of Saskatchewan, and the University of Saskatchewan College of Dentistry, as well as dental organizations from the World Health Organization to Australia, America, British, and Canadian dental associations, and the Centers for Disease Control, suggesting that community water fluoridation programs are one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century, or are supportive of community water fluoridation programs. How do you reconcile scientific studies with the endorsement of every known dental organization that we have pretty much in Saskatchewan, as well as the nation and the world?
Thank you so much for your question. I'm speaking today. I can't speak to, why they're supporting water fluoridation. I'm here speaking today as a citizen who is going to be a potential recipient of this treatment. And so as a concerned citizen, I am doing research and combing through research to see if there's any potential risks associated with this treatment that I could be potentially subjected to. So, in terms of why, their support of water fluoridation, that's fine. I'm not, really speaking to that. I'm more so speaking to my concerns here as a citizen and the research that I've read and calling on the need for further research to be done. One important thing to note is that my understanding is that I think there are a few associations who have actually removed their endorsement. I believe it's the American Kidney Foundation who no longer supports water fluoridation. Don't quote me on that. I can get back to you with a confirmation regarding that. But that's my position regarding that.
Thank you very much for your answer, Mr. Gerard. We have no further questions from council. I'll thank you again very much for your presentation this afternoon and ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to call upon Delegation Shelby Ham from the Saskatchewan Dental Hygienist Association. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, and if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you'll have the opportunity to respond to any question that members of Council may have for you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Shelby Ham, and I am the Registrar of the Saskatchewan Dental Hygienist Association. And it is my pleasure to join you virtually from Treaty 6 territory in Saskatoon. The Saskatchewan Dental Hygienist Association is both the regulatory body and professional association of over 700 registered dental hygienists in the province and over 200 residing in the city of Regina. The Saskatchewan Dental Hygienist Association exists so that the people of Saskatchewan can be ensured of safe, competent, evidence-based dental hygiene care and expertise that contributes to the public's oral and overall health. As oral health care professionals whose primary focus is disease prevention, dental hygienists feel strongly in support of the inclusion of community water fluoridation for the residents of Regina. With over 70 years of evidence, the SDHA is confident in our position that community water fluoridation is safe, effective, and equitable in reducing dental decay. Fluoride benefits the teeth in two methods. Children ingesting appropriate doses of fluoride benefit in the strengthening of enamel for developing permanent teeth. Secondly, fluoride binds to saliva to counteract acid attacks responsible for both tooth decay by sugar and bacteria, keeping your teeth strong by preventing decay and sensitivity. In Saskatchewan, we have identified that there are significant barriers in accessing oral health care, resulting in a high rate of children requiring dental surgeries utilizing coveted operating room time. Nationally, it is estimated that 19,000 day surgeries are performed to treat dental decay among children under the age of 6. Children with tooth decay are often in pain, have difficulty eating, and are at significant educational disadvantages. They are likely to have frequent absences from school and parents losing days of work. It is estimated that for every $1 invested in community water fluoridation, there is a $38 savings in dental treatment. All Canadians, including the citizens of Regina, should have access to this critical public health measure, which plays a significant role in protecting those at high risk for dental decay. Our support is echoed nationally by the Canadian Dental Hygienists Association, Canadian Dental Association, Canadian Association for Public Health Dentistry, Health Canada, World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, and World Dental Federation. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to address any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ham. Any members of council have a question for the delegation? Seeing none, I'll thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon, Ms. Ham, and ask that you please leave the meeting.
Thank you. Dentistry, Health Canada, World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, and World Dental Federation.
I would like to call upon delegation Dr. Bob Dixon, Safe Water Calgary. Please introduce yourself for the record, the organization you're representing, if any, and where you're calling from. You'll have 5 minutes to address City Council, after which you will have the opportunity to respond to any questions that members of council may have for you. Good afternoon, Dr. Dixon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor, and councillors for having me on today. Much appreciated. I'm just going to, I'm hoping you have Safe Water Calgary's top 10 reasons not to fluoridate in front of you, but just before I go into that, I'd like to address a couple of issues. Cavities we can fix, brains we cannot fix. Health Canada has no safety data on hydrofluorosilicic acid. They have not a single bit of data available. That's through FOIA requests. When I first walked into the medical school, one of the first things that I did was to take an oath saying, first do no harm. Fluoridation harms. So please even consider the precautionary principle, which says, if you don't know, don't do it. So let's go to the top 10 reasons not to fluoridate. Any one of these 10 reasons should negate water fluoridation. All 10 together should be a strong force against it. Number 10, there's a major court case in the United States, federal courts, and that's been going on for 5 years now, and we've won every single step along the way. And they've confirmed under oath that fluoride is indeed a medication. We should have a judgment on that very soon. Politicians should not mass medicate people, neither should doctors. Neither should citizens be forced to vote on a plebiscite on who they should be medicating. So you're medicating your fellow citizens? Choice is of utmost importance in this regard. It is highly unethical for me as a doctor to mass medicate, but it's highly unethical for anybody to mass medicate, especially without informed consent. And there is no informed consent with water fluoridation, and there is no monitoring and zero follow-up. Fluorosis, contrary to popular opinion expressed earlier, is skyrocketing in the United States. The actual CDC data shows between 50 to 70% of teens in the United States have some degree of fluorosis, and about 20% of it is serious fluorosis. And that costs a lot of money to fix. You in Regina, we in Calgary, Alberta, I don't think I addressed that issue. I'm phoning from Calgary, Alberta. I'm a family physician in Calgary. We in Calgary and you in Regina are definitely in the vast majority in the world. We're not some backwards places. We're not behind the times. 98% of British Columbia and 98% of Quebec are not fluoridated. 97% of Europe is not fluoridated. And 95% of the world is not fluoridated. So let's stay with the majority there. 38% of Canada is fluoridated. So even in Canada, we're in the majority as not fluoridated regions. Water fluoridation in tight economic times does not make sense. I'm sure you in Regina, as we in Calgary, have very tight economic times now and budget constraints. So to spend in Calgary $30.4 million to refluoridate, or for you folks, several $1 million, I'm sure by the time all the infrastructure and buying the product is taken into account, we're spending a lot of money to put a chemical in the water that we don't need. I'd like to change some of the stats from earlier. It's actually 99% of fluoridated water is used to water lawns, flush toilets, shower and bath, and by industry. So only 1% or less is ingested, and about 20% of people drink bottled water. So they don't even drink tap water. And it's not green to put that 90 to 99% of water back into the ecosystem where it's not allowed originally. A very important point is that fluoride is not a vitamin or a nutrient, and it is not needed for a single body function. I'll repeat that again. It is not needed for a single body function. If Elon Musk took all the fluoride to Mars, we would have a much healthier planet. And fluoride and fluoridation are most harmful to the smallest people in our societies, to baby and children, but it's also harmful to the disadvantaged and the poor, and also to people of color, to wit the organizations in the United States that oppose it. And the last strong point is that fluoride is a proven neurotoxin through the NTP, the National Toxicology Program, which calls it at their highest level of toxicity available after pouring through all the evidence for 3 years. A proven neurotoxin. And it's one of the most toxic substances on the planet. It's more toxic than lead. And folks, we don't want lead in the water, but fluoride is lead and almost as toxic as arsenic. So we do not want to add this to our water. Please hold off on this. There is more and more science coming out every single year, and it is against water fluoridation. It's proving neurotoxicity, proving brain damage to our smallest citizens that are not able to speak for themselves, our babies, our children, and our kids. There are so many better ways to deliver good health care and good dental care to people. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. I have a question from Councillor Mancinelli.
Thank you very much. I took note that you mentioned in Europe there's no fluoridation of the water. I've been listening to the presentations carefully today. I note that I believe it was the Saskatchewan Health Authority mentioned in many places in the world fluoride shows up naturally in water. Do you have any opinion or data on that?
Yes, actually 97% of Western Europe does not fluoridate. But yes, natural calcium fluoride is in virtually all the groundwater around the world at varying concentrations. Here in Calgary, we have about 0.1 to 0.2 parts per million in our Bow River and in our Elbow Rivers. But calcium fluoride is highly toxic too. However, the aquatic life has been smarter than us for the most part because they've learned how to export it. They have fluoride exporting proteins to get rid of fluoride. So natural calcium fluoride is not this wonderful, safe, and effective thing. It's very, very toxic as well. So to top up that natural calcium fluoride with hydrofluorosilicic acid. So I'm going to repeat that again because that's what comes into our city waters in almost every jurisdiction in North America. Hydrofluorosilicic acid out of the fertilizer stacks in Florida and now in China. And it's not cleaned. It comes unadulterated along with mercury, arsenic, lead, some sorts of strontium and bromium and radionuclides, and it comes directly from those fertilizer stacks in that industry into local city waters.
Thank you for that. And for the chemical analysis you're delivering there, am I to understand fluoride, the atom itself, is quite like carbon, and the fact that it's effective is because it's able to combine and bind and prevent bacteria from growing? The reason it's delivered in the format you just mentioned is because it is a radical atom that likes to combine and bind and has to be somewhat mitigated by combining with another atom for delivery. Is that correct?
Yes, that's mostly correct, and yes, it can take care and kill bacteria, and therefore it should be used where it's effective, and that's on the teeth, not in the body. So, for instance, we don't swallow our sunscreen, we put it on our skin. We shouldn't be swallowing our fluoride neither. We should be putting it on our teeth with gels and rinses and foams and sealants and toothpaste. But we should not be taking it internally because it is one of the most toxic elements on the planet.
Thank you. For those places that you mentioned that don't fluoridate water, do any of them actually strip the fluoride out of the water that naturally occurs in their sources?
Yes, there's a number of places around the world that have to do that because the natural calcium fluoride is so high. Places in India and China, for instance, and they have numerous problems from having too high fluoride. But the studies that are coming out now are studies that are being done, particularly the Canadian studies, excellent studies that have been published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, in JAMA, for instance, and those are all done at 0.7 parts per million. So I'm not sure why previous speakers deny that fact. The Canadian studies are done at 0.7 parts per million, which is what you folks in Regina and we in Calgary are proposing to put back in our clean public waters.
Thank you. When they strip the fluoride out, do they strip it down to a 0 level, or do they leave an allowable amount for safety, for dental safety for their residents and people who consume the water?
It's not needed for any body function, so generally speaking, they strip as much of it out as they can. Fluoride's a very small and tiny volatile ion, and it's very difficult to get rid of. And that's why, like in houses, once you fluoridate, people need a whole house reverse osmosis system to remove fluoride from the water, and those systems cost anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 each. And so if you're going to say to poor people, well, you know, you might be allergic to fluoride, and that's another thing to address. There are allergies to fluoride. 1 to 5% of people are allergic to fluoride. So if you're allergic to fluoride or you don't want it in your water, are you going to spend $5,000 to $15,000 to remove it from your house? Because that's what it requires. The normal Britas and fridge filters, they do not remove fluoride. So you have to have a very expensive filter to remove that.
Thank you. We've just had a variety of public servants and officials from our own province inform us about the benefits of fluoride. Also, people with medical degrees. Why the difference of opinions? It seems the vast medical community agrees with fluoride. How have you come to your determinant and your fears of your fluoride kind of against what they're informing us of?
Yeah, this is a highly controversial topic, and I don't envy you folks for having to make this decision because I don't imagine most of you are scientists. But it is one of the most polarized topics on the planet right now. I'd just like to correct something that Janelle said. I very much appreciated Janelle's presentation, and she did some excellent work there. But there's actually 488 studies as of the end of 2019 just on neurotoxicity of fluoride. There's actually thousands of studies on fluoride itself, but there's 488 at the end of 2019 on the neurotoxicity alone of fluoride. 149 of those studies were human studies, and 339 were animal studies. So there's thousands of studies against fluoride and about the toxicities of fluoride to the thyroid gland, to the kidneys, to making the bones thicker and more brittle and easier to fracture, to damaging the microbiome in the gut, to even damaging teeth, as I mentioned before, with the high degree of fluorosis in the United States at 73% fluoridated.
Thank you for that. My final question is, with the dangers of fluoride, having gone through lead being taken out of gasoline, the change in the smoking habits of people around the world, why is there no large group trying to get toothpaste, mouthwash, all the fluoridated products and all the dangers off the shelves if the science has changed so dramatically?
Because again, there's a couple of reasons there. Choice is one, because if you buy those things, those products, and use them, then you have a choice. But the thing is, as I said before, it's topical. The effect is topical. Even the CDC in the States has admitted that the effect of fluoride is topical, not ingested. So right now, yes, there's a number of organizations that have this circular referencing that go round and round and pat each other on the back and say, yes, safe and effective, safe and effective. But there's actually more than 22 organizations now that oppose or have pulled back from fluoridation, including the Kidney Foundation and many others. I can send you the list of them if you like. But there's more than 22 organizations that now oppose, and you never hear of that. And a lot of the organizations that still are on that list of 90, if you actually contact them, they don't really support it. They're just kind of going along for the ride. They really don't know a whole lot about water fluoridation, and they're not actually supportive. They're still on the list.
Thank you. Your mention of the Kidney Foundation, are you saying the Kidney Foundation actually has a recommendation that fluoride should not be added? And have you studied this recently?
No, they don't have a recommendation not to be added. They have withdrawn their support for fluoridation. They are no longer on the list.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Councillor Moll.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for speaking. I have a few questions for you. So, heard a lot of people say about 90 organizations endorsing fluoride in the water. Have these organizations kept up with the emerging science?
Generally speaking, they're not organizations that do the research. They're organizations that are sort of professional organizations, they're labor organizations, they're unions, that sort of thing, and very few of them actually do any research on it. So again, it's that circular referencing that happens that, well, those people said it was good, so we'll say it's good too, and we'll support that. But if you follow the money, like almost everything in the world, follow the money. And the big players, Colgate, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and those sorts of organizations and companies, they benefit to the tune of over $20 billion a year from fluoride profits. And so they fund a lot of the studies, they fund a lot of the information, they fund a lot of the, shall we call it, propaganda that happens out there that fluoride is safe and effective. So that's a big hill to climb. But again, if you use it topically instead of ingested, we have no problem with that. Use it topically where the action is. If there's any action, it's on the teeth, and we can use it through your toothpaste, fluoride gels and rinses and all those sorts of things.
Yes, I do agree it's a topical treatment. Just curious, how much does it cost to repair dental fluorosis?
Oh my. So as I mentioned, about 20% of fluorosis is now getting into the moderate to severe categories. And that is hard to fix. It's hard to repair. That's permanent damage. One of my dental friends here in downtown Calgary has a lot of kids in his practice. And he, by the way, has also said that he has seen zero increase in caries and cavities in Calgary in the last 10 years since we stopped water fluoridation. He says he sees no difference. But in the past, when we were fluoridated for 20 years, from 1991 to 2011, when we turned off the fluoride taps here, there were a number of kids born that had dental fluorosis. And this particular dentist, in his practice, he's had a lot of kids with fluorosis and done a lot of repairs, but he had two kids in particular that were from a wealthy family, and it cost $70,000 per patient to repair the dental fluorosis damage that was moderate to severe in those two boys. $70,000 a person. Now, okay, you're going to save $100 per cavity? Well, maybe, but I tell you, you tell a kid, a teenager that has spots all over his teeth, his or her teeth, that, oh, it's just cosmetic. I think you'll get a different answer there.
Wow, that's quite a lot of money. Just curious.
A lot.
Yeah, just curious, can you get enough fluoride from toothpaste alone?
Generally speaking, yes. Again, you get fluoride from other things that are in our society as well. You get a little bit of natural calcium fluoride. You get it from packaged and processed foods. You get it from drinks, bottled drinks. You get it from a lot of different sources. And so that's why we're seeing fluorosis, because kids and people are getting too much fluoride now. So that's why if you put it in the water, you're also competing against all those other sources of fluoride that are out there. And it's very, very easy to overdose people. Particularly as you get smaller and smaller, the infants, babies, children, they're much more susceptible to an overdose of fluoride.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Mole. Councillor Findura.
Thank you, Mayor Master, through you. Question, sir. You mentioned about filters like Brita that do not take out fluoride. Curious about the reverse osmosis. Would that do anything with the fluoride?
Yes, as I mentioned before, the normal filters out there, virtually all the filters do not take out fluoride. It's such a small ion. Those filters will remove chlorine and some of the other contaminants, but they do not remove fluoride. The only thing that will remove fluoride, there's actually two things: distillation and reverse osmosis. Distillation produces water that's kind of flat and dead and not really good for people because it has no minerals or any of the good things left in it. And reverse osmosis, almost all the systems remove everything and then remineralize with the minerals that are good for you. But again, that cost $5,000 to $15,000. I don't know, as a doctor, I'm not going to be wanting to afford that. And I know a lot of other people that just don't have the money for that. It's very, very costly to remove fluoride once it's in the public water.
Thank you for that. And then I believe there was a couple of comments made that hydrofluoric acid, if it gets out into the air, is that considered pollution?
Absolutely, because the fluoride industry in Florida, the fertilizer industry in Florida is not allowed by very strict laws to put fluoride in the air, in rivers, lakes, streams, oceans, or in the ground. They can't put it anywhere. They'd have to dispose of it in a proper waste disposal facility, such as in Alberta we have the Swan Hills plant, but it's very expensive to dispose of things there. And so if they don't dispose of it in those places, then what do they do? What do they do with it? Where do they put it? Well, they ship it right to our city waters and put it in our public water without any cleaning, without any preparation for it. And it saves them money. They actually get paid money to put it in our city water, whereas they would have to pay to dispose of it in these waste disposal facilities. So, yeah, it's a huge cost saving for the fertilizer industry, that's for sure. And the other point there being is then once 99% of it's not drank, where does it go? Well, in Calgary, it goes back into our Bow River, and that's where it's not allowed in the first place. So it is not green, it is not environmentally friendly if you're going to be putting all of that fluoride, which amounts to tons a day in a city the size of Calgary, back into our public waters and rivers and our systems.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question, my masters, to you. You did mention, I've heard it correctly, that Calgary has taken out the fluoride from their water system?
That's correct. Yeah, we had it from 1991 to 2011, so it's been out of the Calgary system for 10 years, and many dentists that I've spoken to see no increase in cavities. Other dentists do see increase in cavities and caries, but that's happening in Edmonton and Toronto that have been fluoridated since the 1960s. And that, unfortunately, is happening virtually worldwide. We had all the countries in the world, according to the World Health Organization data, all the countries in the world since the 1960s, cavities and caries have come down for several decades, whether they're fluoridated or not. So that in itself says that it's not water fluoridation that has caused this decrease in cavities, because non-fluoridated countries have come down in cavities and caries to the same amount. But there has been an uptick in the last several years, the last decade or so, and I think most people believe that to be from poor diets, from the power drinks that are out there, the sugary drinks, and lack of good dental care too. There's a whole lot of factors that come into play there. Lack of vitamin D in the diet, poor diets generally speaking, a lot of junk foods. So there's a whole lot of reasons that cavities and caries are upticking in both fluoridated and non-fluoridated cities and jurisdictions. In Calgary and Edmonton, actually at the end of the study in 2016 that has got all the erroneous press around it, they ended up at the very same level at the end of that study.
Okay, thank you. So I'll probably ask administration if they know, would you know the reason why Calgary Council would have removed that?
It was removed for two primary reasons back in 2011. One is cost. It would have cost $6 million for infrastructure at that point, plus $1 million a year. Now the cost is projected to be $30.4 million over 20 years, and so the cost is very large. But the other thing that the Calgary councillors in 2011 predicated their decisions on were the ethics and morality of mass medicating their entire population. Councillors told me personally, and on record as well, that they are not scientists, they don't know all the science, they don't know how to go through all the science, but they do have the abilities and capability of making decisions based on the ethics and moralities. And it is not ethical, it is not moral to mass medicate without control of dose or dosage, without monitoring or follow-up. And that's another point that has to be made here. People say, oh yeah, well the concentration's been lowered from 1.2 to 1 part per million to 0.8 parts per million to 0.7 parts per million. Don't they know what the safe and effective level is? But the point there being is that there really is no safe level, and the new studies coming out showing even 0.2 parts per million is too much fluoride.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Findura. Seeing no further questions from council, I'll thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Dixon, and ask that you please leave the meeting now.
Thank you.
Council, we have a legislative break at 3 o'clock. I would suggest that we break now for 15 minutes and come back to deal with the motion on the floor. Council, any opposed?
I have a letter that was distributed to all councilors and yourself from the Saskatchewan Dental Assistants Association. I'd like to have that letter, if I could, placed on the record. I may move that.
Would you like to read it, sir?
Sure, it's
Please.
very short. The Saskatchewan Dental Assistants Association is the regulatory body mandated through legislation to regulate all registered dental assistants in the province of Saskatchewan. We have over 1,500 members practicing in many public and private settings across the province. Fluoride has been proven to support improved dental health, in turn promoting improved overall health. Specifically, fluoride helps prevent tooth decay, a common yet serious disease in Canada. We have used fluoride in Canada to prevent tooth decay since the 1940s, as fluoride has been scientifically proven to strengthen tooth enamel, lower the amount of acid in your mouth, rebuild minerals that make teeth stronger. By providing fluoridated water in Regina, you will finally be bringing this city up to the level of health promotion that most Canadian cities have been benefiting from for years. The SDAA fully endorses the use of fluoride in drinking water across our province as a mechanism to improve oral health and thereby the overall health of Saskatchewan residents, and it's signed by the President and the Executive Director Registrar of the Saskatchewan Dental Assistants Association. I provided the clerk with a copy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawkins. Appreciate that. Can I have someone second it, please? Councillor Bresciani. Any opposed to the receipt of that? Thank you. 2:57 now. Well done, Councillor Hawkins. We are going to take a 15-minute recess and be back here at 3:13. Thank you. now consider item MN 21-7, the community water fluoridation for the city of Regina. Councillor Hawkins, could I ask that you please introduce the motion?
Thank you very much, Mayor Masters. I move the motion as follows, that the Regina City Council direct the administration to adopt a program of community water fluoridation similar to the one currently followed by the city of Moose Jaw and in accordance with the norms established by Health Canada, and approve the said community fluoridation program to start once the upgrades to the Buffalo Pound water treatment plant are completed. I'll need a seconder, Mayor, and perhaps the administration would like to speak to this first.
Councillor Shaw, thank you. And just note for council, we do have Ryan Johnson from the Buffalo Pound water treatment plant online to answer any technical questions if they're needed. Mr. Kim Onright, would you, at the direction of Councillor, please?
Thank you. Through the chair. So joining me today, as the mayor had noted, Ryan Johnson, General Manager, Buffalo Pound Water Treatment Plant. Ryan is here to address any questions regarding the changes required at Buffalo Pound Treatment Plant to implement a citywide fluoride system. We also have Kevin Zernick, Manager Water and Sewer Engineering, and Garrett Reuters, Manager Environmental Services, from the administration to answer any other related water system questions. And I'll maybe just add, talk a little bit about process if council passes this motion. Administration would bring a report back for the 2023 budget deliberation discussion that would put a couple of options in front of council regarding the funding source. So it would come from the utility budget. There are two ways to do it without providing a bunch of detail, which I don't have, but one would be utility mill rate increase for the $2 million capital spend, and then there's approximately $210,000 a year, and that is for the chemicals. So basically $1 per person. One is operating, of course, and one is capital. The other way would be to use the take the $2 million out of the capital reserve. That would mean there would be some movement in the capital work that would be done in the given year the funding was being removed, which means you will do $2 million less capital work in that given year. So, but I just want to bring that to the attention of council, knowing that there will be a report that will come for the 2023 discussion. The reason it'll come in 2023 is Mr. Johnson needs a commitment for funding, knowing where he's going to be paid from in order for him to move forward, do design work on the equipment and the changes that would be required in the new design for Buffalo Pound upgrades that are currently in the plan for coming forward. The actual work of what you would see, or what the citizens of Regina would see, would probably come in about 2025, because it needs to be staged with the work that is being planned at Buffalo Pound. You're not installing the system before the upgrades are complete. So with that, I'll hand it back to the mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hawkins, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Colleagues on council, you've heard two very different stories painted this afternoon. One story says that the addition of fluoride at a regulated minimal rate to the water produces dramatic improvement in child health, child tooth health, and moreover, it's an improvement which continues throughout our lives and into our elderly age. It also is a story that says this is absolutely safe. So that when you listen to Dr. Madu and Dr. Uzak, they said there is no proven science which supports the claims ranging from cancer through thyroid, through osteoporosis, to all of those claims that are without foundation. And then on the other side, you heard, oh, well, fluoridation is expensive. Kids can get their teeth fluoridated through other methods, that there's huge health risks associated with fluoridation. So who are you and I going to believe? We do have a way of dealing with this kind of problem in our society. Courts deal with battles of experts all the time. And in the end, those doing the judging are required to ask themselves, because like us, they're not scientists, they're required to ask themselves which point of view, which group is more credible. Let me read out for you what the mayor read in one of her questions. Fluoridation has been endorsed by over 90 national and international professional health organizations, including College of Dental Surgeons of Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan Dental Therapists Association, Saskatchewan Dental Assistants Association, Saskatchewan Ministry of Health, Saskatchewan Public Health Association, Canadian Dental Association, Canadian Medical Association, Canadian Pediatric Association, American Dental Association, U.S. Center for Disease Control, U.S. Surgeon General, and World Health Organization. And further, the Canadian Public Health Association has indicated that fluoridation is one of the 12 great public health milestones in the past 100 years. One of the delegations that we've heard dismissed all of that as folks just going along for the ride. Well, that's not credible to me. That list that I read to you consists of some of the world's great scientists looking at, on a regular basis, all of the science associated with fluoridation, and that list says fluoridation is good, it's good for our health, it's especially good for young people and old people, and it is completely safe. And I'd ask you, when you're casting your vote, to remember that list of highly professional scientists. And I'd ask you to remember one other thing. Uniquely in my lifetime, we are living in a moment in which scientists, people like the very people in this list, have saved hundreds of thousands and probably millions of lives in the last 18 months by inventing a vaccine which we have injected, which is now protecting us against one of the world's great pandemics. Again, one delegation dismissed as an offhanded way the work of Pfizer. Well, I have 2 Pfizer shots in my arm, and I thank God for it every day, and I thank those scientists. And that's why when I make my choice, I'm going to say the credible group are the group that the mayor's listed to you and that I've listed to you. It's the first thing I want to say about science. The second thing is I want to underline the point that this is a community health initiative. Community health issues are what this council was elected to decide. We don't ask the community to deal by referenda on this kind of thing. The community placed their confidence in us to get all of the best evidence and then to make an informed judgment. I think we have a responsibility and a duty here this afternoon to make that judgment. And I'll just say on, as a more anecdotal note, I've had many people contact me about this. Some have said they do not want fluoride put in the water, but many more have said, you mean to tell me it's not in the water? I just assumed it was there. I think that this community will support the decision of this council strongly in deciding to fluoridate water. The precautionary principle was mentioned. Well, what can be more compelling in speaking of precaution than saving the teeth of our young people? What can be more compelling, speaking of precaution, than the community health benefits that will come from fluoridation? And moreover, if you don't like the science, and I do like the science that I cited to you, just take a look around you. Use your eyes. The City of Toronto, for the last 70 years, has fluoridated the water. People aren't being harmed by that. People are being helped by that. Same for Saskatoon, same for Moose Jaw, same for London, Ontario and Hamilton, same for Edmonton. This is a proven, scientific advance, and it's one that we can see because we've lived watching that proof. I want to just end on a final note. One thing all the delegations did agree on, often at the end of their submission, they said today that we're being called to make an ethical choice. That takes it out of the range of most decisions. We are being charged with making an ethical choice. And it seems to me it's doubly important to say we're being called to make an ethical choice for our kids and our grandchildren, for people who are not in a position yet to make that choice for themselves. And I want to submit to you, this ethical choice for fluoridation will mean brighter smiles, will mean stronger teeth, and will mean healthier lifetimes for the young people of this city. It will make us a stronger community, and I urge you to support the motion, and I thank you for the encouragement that you've given this motion to date. Appreciate that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I have Councillor Stanachuk who wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I strongly support this motion, and we've heard all of the reasons why this is an important initiative. I just want to speak about one example, and that is from the city of Windsor. So in February of 2013, the city of Windsor, their council decided to cease fluoridation of the water. And they also thought that they would take the savings from that and put it into an oral health education campaign for 5 years. And they did a massive amount of education about the importance of brushing your teeth, taking care of your teeth. They distributed kits. They did videos that were on television and at the movie theaters. They handed out baby oral health kits. They did all of that work, yet despite that, 5 years later, their health unit, the Windsor Essex Health Unit, did a comparison of kids. And again, it wasn't a small sample. It was over 18,000 children from 119 schools that were screened for oral health. And in that 5-year period without fluoridation, the number of children with tooth decay or requiring urgent care increased by 51%. And the number of children in the area with urgent dental needs was twice the rate of other cities across Ontario. I think that and how the city of Windsor is going to be putting fluoride back into the water, because they found that 5-year break, despite the public education campaign, and a number of people have said to me, why don't we just do education, distribute toothpaste and talk to kids about it. They did that, and they still found that the urgent needs of kids in their schools, their oral health care decreased significantly, and the number of kids were completely cavity-free, that actually decreased by 13%. And then again, 57% of kids had urgent dental needs. So I think that provides a lot of food for thought about how important community fluoride in the water is. And I support this motion. And I hope that we will see the same kind of results here. We did hear from the dental educator from the Saskatchewan Health Authority, the high cost of dental surgery. And I just cannot imagine that there'd be, in 1 year, 317 children under the age of 5 that required dental surgery at a cost of $1,700 per surgery. That's a really high cost. And it shouldn't get to that point. So I hope that this will improve kids' health, dental health, our newcomers maybe who who are coming to this country, and everyone else in terms of improving our dental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadnichuk. Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, so I too support this, and I will say the reason is why is the research that was shared with us, we see all of, as was spoken by Councillor Hawkins and Mayor Masters, but there's one other thing that really, I can just share the experience is with my daughter and her journey in her dental. As a special needs child, you have to get work done and you have to go into hospital to do it. But along our journey, I met many other special needs families and children that were absolutely suffering from this tooth decay. As I went to the dentist with my daughter, I spoke with the dentist and he had indicated to me that his OR time had been cut back. And he was the main dentist for special needs. And that he did not know at that time how long it was going to be for many of those children, and some adults would absolutely get in to have their teeth done. And at one time when my daughter was there was a lady, and I remember advocating. I had called the government and I had tried to get extra time and shared Brittany's story of the pain that you go through when you have dental pain, but also as we heard, it's not just the dental, it's more than that. And it's pain on the family, it's pain on the parents. Every time you have to go in and be put under, you're talking a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old. I think we can do better than that. Someone called me today and said, you know, I thought this was done 20 years ago. I didn't realize this is almost like the tobacco or the smoking that came when we were first on council. And so, again, this is something that I believe we do need to change, and I think it will benefit all, I'm going to say generations, but the next generation, but it'll also help families that have low income. And I'll say that still today, when I assist adults that are at a lower income level to get to the dentist, they're not covered for root canals and all these other things. It's just basic, I'll pull the tooth, or it's a basic. So again, we need to make sure that at the end of the day, we're doing all we can, and that we see our sister city of Saskatoon has done it, Moose Jaw, we share the plant. They've got things ready to go. I would like to ask if I can, Mr. Johnson is on the line, and as we are doing our new plant, is this going to be, is it all ready to go, or what needs to be done to get this set up at the plant, through you, Madam Mayor?
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Bresciani. So the plant renewal project, we have an area set aside to add fluoride. So if the City of Regina chooses to add fluoride, we can add it. It does require time for design and supply of equipment, but there is an area set aside so that if the decision doesn't come shortly and it comes, 5-6 years down the road or 10 years, where what have you, there will be an area set aside that we could use to add fluoride if that is the case.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, you've done this for Moose Jaw for how many years, and has there been any concerns come back to yourself or the board regarding fluoride that's in their water? Through the chair.
Thank you, Your Worship, through the councillor. City of Moose Jaw, to our knowledge, we've been fluoridating since about the late 1950s. We've never had any issues with the fluoridation process itself, but we too will receive phone calls occasionally, both for and against fluoride. And because we are a service provider, we refer those back to the city or to the health region, because it's not our place to make that decision. We just provide the service that the owners request.
Great. And I guess the last question, it was asked, I think, by Councillor Moule. How do we know that, when fluoride's added to the water, that it dissipates and there's not more going into it? Then how is that monitored? Through the chair.
Thank you, Worship, through the councillor. So I'm going to give you a little lengthier response. There is naturally occurring fluoride in Buffalo Pound Lake. It's around 0.15 to 0.2 milligrams per liter. After we're done treating it, it's reduced to around 0.1 milligram per liter. In the case of moose jaw, then we top it up to 0.7 milligrams per liter. In City of Regina, we don't do anything for. Fluoride itself is not easy to remove from the water system. It requires an RO system, or reverse osmosis, for the most part. So the water that we take out goes back into the water. In Regina's case, the wastewater treatment plant will receive about 0.1. Moose jaws will be a little higher when it's fluoridated, to around 0.7. So it could receive, the environment will receive it at those dosages. And to my understanding is that does not cause any concerns, but that is a Water Security Agency issue, or they're really in the best position to respond to that.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Bresciani. Councillor Skidniak.
Thank you. Before I make my comments, I do have a few questions. So I'll start off with just a question about, so Moose Jaw already puts fluoride in their water, and if we move forward with this, just some clarification about the equipment and whether we're able to share the cost with Moose Jaw or use their equipment, or how that works. Through the chair, please.
Thank you, Worship, to the councillor. So we had looked at this when the issue first came up, whether Moose Jaw system would be adequate to service Regina as well. Unfortunately, Moose Jaw system is far too small for the system to assist the City of Regina. So these will be two separate systems at the plant. Also, it is important to know that in the future, at some point, Moose Jaw may decide not to use fluoride as well. So if they have their own system, they could cease, well, without impacting the City of Regina. So in this case, it is maybe not the most efficient system, but based on the fact we have two owners that may have two different futures, it's easier that way. And unfortunately, Moose Jaw just commissioned, or as they're currently commissioning their brand new fluoride system now, and it was already purchased and installed, or purchased to be installed before this issue came up. So there wasn't an opportunity to really share costs with Moose Jaw and put a larger system in.
Okay, I understand. So my next question would be for administration. So just responding to some of the concerns that we've heard, my first question is a follow-up to a question I asked the SHA, which is, you know, if the scientific information in relation to fluoridation, if the scientific consensus changes, what mechanisms are in place for city administration to respond to that?
Thank you, through your worship. So through our partnership with Buffalo Pound, we would be notified of any changes. Their notifications would come through Health Canada. Any changes to the regulations, they would be notified, as their agreement is with Health Canada and need to follow those guidelines through Health Canada. So that's how we would be notified.
Okay. And my second question is, there are some community members, for whatever reason, who, if we pass this, may choose that they don't want fluoride in their water. I do know that there's some filters that folks can purchase to remove fluoride. What I'm requesting is, if administration, if this passes, could include some information about on the website, so that folks who choose to remove the fluoride have that information available to them about how to do so.
Through your worship, yes, we would be able to do that, and we would provide links to areas that would provide, let me back up a little bit. We'd have Q&As on the website to help answer some of those questions, and then we would provide links to companies that would be able to provide that service.
Great. Okay, and in relation to my comments, you know, we've heard from, I agree with what my colleagues have been saying so far. I think everybody has made strong points that I'm in favor of. And we've heard about the benefits of fluoride for our community. And we've also heard about what happens to our most vulnerable community members when they don't have regular access to dental care. We also know that community water fluoridation is endorsed by over 90 national and international professional organizations to prevent tooth decay. But we have heard a few concerns today, and there is some scientific research questioning the benefits of fluoride and raising concerns about negative health implications. However, at this point, the majority of scientific evidence supports fluoridation. Should this change in the future, I would not hesitate to bring this matter back to council for reconsideration. But finally, unlike the children who do not have access to regular dental care, those wishing to avoid fluoride at least have the choice of purchasing a water filter. So for those reasons, and some of the others already mentioned, I do continue to support this motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Zakidniak. Councillor Fundura.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. Through you, to Mr. Johnson, you mentioned reverse osmosis. The question would be, if a resident has a small little reverse osmosis under the sink to filter some things, would that little machine, you might want to call it, the filtration system, because I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, would that take out fluoridation from the water?
Thank you, Worship, to Councillor Fedora. That is correct. An RO system is one of the better ways to remove fluoride, and you can get in-house systems for it, but I can't speak to the cost because I haven't looked into that at all. But an RO system pretty well removes most things out of water, so you pretty well get a water without anything, no minerals, no nothing. It's pretty well just straight water.
So that means don't drink that. Okay, thank you. Then question to administration on the I think the delegation mentioned something about Calgary has removed the fluoridation from the water since 2011. I'm just asking if there's a knowledge from Calgary why they did that, or what's happening with them, what information we have on that, Mayor Masters?
So through your Mayor Masters, yeah, the delegation spoke to the fact that the City of Calgary removed fluoridation in 2011. Obviously, they would have had their own reasons for doing that. I can't speak to the context of the decision. But just in February of this year, they have decided at their municipal election in October to go to a plebiscite to add fluoridation back. And the reason that they've chosen to do that is in 2011, it was a decision of council, and fluoridation was put in by plebiscite. So their council decided in February, the community and the citizens said we should fluoridate. Council made a decision without a plebiscite to remove it. So that's their reason for saying they'll go back to a plebiscite in October of this year as a part of their municipal election.
Okay, thank you for that. And then is it the dollar cost of fluoridation per resident? Is it like $1 or something per year? What's the cost? I mean, is it cost for because the plant is being built and whatever we need to settle up, but afterwards, so what's the cost before when the plant is built, or is it and then ongoing cost after that?
Yeah. So as Mr. Onright has indicated, it's a $2 million capital investment, and that might change slightly prior to 2023, 2025 when that work is complete, and the operational costs are approximately $210,000. So if you look at population, it's approximately $1 a year per citizen.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll reserve my comments, or I'll sit and listen. I think so I'm good. Thank you. I'm good.
Any other members of council wish to speak to the motion on the floor? Councillor Mole.
Okay, I have a few questions for administration or possibly Mr. Johnson. So, Mr. Onright, you referred to a utility mill rate increase, potentially to pay for this. So, if we don't take it out of the reserve, what will we be looking at for a mill rate increase?
Through your worship, I don't have that number right at this time, but that would definitely be clarified when we come in 2023. I would think it would be around 0.5%, somewhere in there on the utility side.
Okay, 0.5%? Okay. So when would the install take place of this? 2023 again?
Through your worship, I'll ask Mr. Johnson to comment regarding the timeline of installation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Your Worship. Right now, if the City of Regina gives indication in 2023 that this was something that City of Regina would like to do, we would then scope it into the project, track the design costs and the installation materials and costs. It would likely be installed by late 2024 and commissioned for early 2025 is what we have today. That is subject to change based on the progress of the project, but that would be what we would foresee today.
Okay, thank you. So I asked this question of a few delegates. I'm hoping the administration has the answer. So what chemical compound is used to fluoridate? Do you know what the mixture is?
Thank you, Your Worship. I could probably best handle that one. It's known under several names, but hydrofluorosilicic acid is typical. That's what City of Moose Jaw is using. That's what most cities are using. It's basically a liquid fluoride that's at about 25% concentration that is then injected into the water system.
What else is mixed within that? You said 25% composition. Is it just the acid or?
Yeah, it's basically mixed down, so 25% of it, the rest would be basically water. All of the chemicals that we use in water treatment have to meet NSF 60, which is an industry standard that we use for all water treatment chemicals, so it's all the materials that go into the water is safe. Now, with that said, I think some presenters were talking about some elements. When fluoride is added to the water, there's a chemical reaction that occurs immediately, and it's as soon as you measure after that reaction, it's safe to drink, provided that it's done as per regulations and at the appropriate concentrations.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully I can get this under my 5 minutes I'm allowed to speak. So through you, Madam Mayor, I'm going to recite this Health Canada letter that I received from somebody just before the meeting. It's an Access to Information and Privacy Division of Health Canada. Dear Ms. David, this is in response to your request under the Access to Information Act for clarified request text. Reports, studies, toxicology, and clinical tests relating to hydrofluorosilicic acid in Canadian tap water. Original request text. Documents pertaining specifically to hydrofluorosilicic acid in Alberta and Canadian tap water. Studies from 1940 showing dental efficacy and human safety. Studies from 1950 showing dental efficacy and human safety. Any double-blind study done by Canada or any province showing dental efficacy and human safety of any date. Any double-blind study done by anywhere in the world that was considered. Any toxicity study of any date done by Canada or the world that was considered. Evidence of any kind, not opinion, that shows the statistical viability of water fluoridation in terms of efficacy and margin of error calculations. Evidence of any kind, not opinion, that shows the statistical viability of water fluoridation in terms of human safety over a long time and the margin of error calculations. Evidence of any kind, not opinion, that shows statistical viability of water fluoridation in terms of human safety and margin of error calculations for infants, young children, elderly, or any adult with disability, diabetes, bone disease, autism, thyroid ailments, kidney disease, etc. Evidence of any kind of consideration of human rights and medical ethics, namely, or human right to opt out of the forced water fluoridation program. And if that consideration exists, why is the overriding of these well-established medical standards are breached? The answer from Health Canada. After a thorough search for the requested information, no records were located which respond to your request. So, the motion to add fluoride to the drinking water was introduced by our City Council with less consultation than the issue was due. Almost all Regina residents drink water, city water, every day, and it's hard to think of an issue that affects people's lives more personally. Some of my colleagues in City Council may feel that the direct effect is positive and this is the very reason this should be done. However, it takes only a small amount of thought to realize a substance that spends half a second in the mouth before swallowed will spend much more time in the body afterwards. Some studies have suggested that harms to the body can occur over time, especially for infants. Every tube of toothpaste is harmful if swallowed, but our residents will end up swallowing a lot of what is arguably its most active ingredient if it is added to our drinking water. The city has had 4 referendums on this issue, 1954, 58, 65, and 85. Every time residents opposing adding fluoride to the water. Did this opinion ever change? For City Council to impose fluoride on residents without strong public demand or a mandate to proceed doesn't seem to be warranted. We received approximately 100 messages at our City Council city email addresses, and approximately out of those 100, 80% are opposing adding fluoride to the water. In addition, hundreds of Regina residents have signed a petition online to express their concerns, a petition I encourage city councilors and interested citizens to read, as it is packed with studies and information that should make us think twice about adding fluoride. Should more than 230,000 residents of Regina be made to ingest a substance because 11-person city council simply decided they should? Should citizens pay $2 million to add fluoride equipment to the Buffalo Pond Water Treatment Plant, then $200,000 plus a year to add the fluoride itself when there was little public demand for the change? I believe the answer is no. And this should not be done with a mandate from the population. City councils of the past had the sense to do this. Therefore, I make a motion to have a referendum on this issue so that people of Regina can tell us for themselves whether they want this additive in their water. Although a referendum will cost approximately $550,000, it is the cost of doing things the right way. If they vote no, this motion will have saved them a net of roughly $1.5 million that we would have spent on something they didn't want. If we receive a yes vote, it will be a stronger mandate to pursue this direction. Thank you very much. I believe Amber has my motion.
Councillor Moll needs a seconder on his motion. Councillor Findura. You have 3 minutes to speak to your amendment, Councillor Moll.
I think I used up a lot of the time to speak to already. My speech was very thorough. I believe the residents have the right to choose on this issue. There's been many referendums on in the past. We spoke about a plebiscite in Calgary, and this is everybody's drinking water. I can't imagine spending $5,000 to $15,000 in an RO system to remove the fluoride if you don't want it. I currently have a filter system that I pay for, and I called the company that I purchased it from. They said I need to add another device to remove the fluoride completely, and I spent quite a bit of money for that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Moll. Councillor Findura.
Thank you, Mayor Masters. I second the motion because I believe everything and anything should be debated and discussed on the floor. From the previous years, we were trying to do things on the floor and discuss matters and didn't make it that way. And I promised myself I will never do that. If someone makes a motion, I will second it, not because I believe or don't believe, it's because we need that chance to have a conversation. Now to the motion, as we believe in fluoride in the water, sounds like everyone, I mean, there's a very difficult and hard decision because you have opposite information, scientific or not. Then I believe that we should give the people of Regina a choice. I mean, I've been asked that question and those comments. Well, I mean, and do I have that? Yes, I would say in the comments made or discussion had is that we were elected to make decisions. Correct. But that means that we elected to make decisions in different ways. And I believe that this way, giving the people the choice, I don't think we can go wrong if I vote in favor of put fluoride in because it's going to help. Great. And if I'm not moving myself away from responsibility of what my vote or what my responsibility as a councillor is, it tells me and tells the citizen of Regina that we've always been asked, ask us for the input, not after. Ask us before you make decisions. We've had, when we built the stadium, we were on the plaza, and it was the election time. We voted for What we did, we went into, I think it was a referendum on the wastewater treatment plant. It was an easy decision. Citizens made a decision. And that decision was the right decision to go the way we went. And it's proven that way. So I believe by involving the residents, well, no. I don't mind the pressure. I'll vote, no worries. But I believe that if the citizens are asking, I don't see there's a problem. And the citizen is paying for that. So our taxpayer is paying for it. If it's $500,000 to do whatever's done, if it's $2 million, it's the bottom line is the citizen, taxpayer Regina that pays for everything that we do. We got some grants, different things, but so I'm thinking in that sense. So I supported Councilor Moll that way. The debates, I like to hear all the council here, the feel on this. So that's my couple cents on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vendura. Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you. I'm going to speak against this motion. I think it hinges on the idea that what we heard from today were competing experts, some on one side, some on the other. I suggest that that's not true. Councillor Hawkins rightly pointed out that we heard from experts saying, yes, fluoridate your water. The people we heard from saying not to do it, I suggest are not experts. The two main people we heard from were Janelle Gerard and Dr. Dixon. Ms. Gerard is clearly very bright. She has an honors degree in psychology from the University of Regina. That's not an applicable degree. Ms. Gerard rightly and shrewdly noted that she was relying and had consulted with a leading expert on fluoridation in the world, Dr. Kathleen Thiessen. On my review, Dr. Kathleen Thiessen is not an academic, does not publish peer-reviewed articles, mostly focuses on radiation rather than fluoridation. She's in effect a tradesperson, very smart but not relevant expertise. Dr. Dixon, of course, is a medical doctor rather than a dental doctor, and we heard from many dental doctors who disagreed with him. So I suggest we do not have competing experts. We have experts on one side and non-experts on the other. It's not the sort of thing we need a referendum on. The second point I'd make, maybe piggybacking off Councillor Fundura, is I think what we have is a representative democracy rather than a direct democracy. And that means it is very often up to us to make decisions based on what we think is in the community's best interest. I think that's what we're called for here. To put it bluntly, I think the individuals who fluoride will most benefit, so low-income people, older folks, babies, those are not the sort of people who are likely to vote in a referendum. So I think we're not likely to hear from the people this is most targeted at. And so a referendum is a bad tool here and is likely to get an improper result. So I'm going to vote against this proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Mancinelli.
Thank you. In stepping into this debate, I remembered my tour of the water facility in my first term. I remember seeing the fluoridation system going towards Moose Jaw, and I was quite surprised about the $2 million capital price tag associated with the program. I had spoke to many of my residents who contacted me and informed them of my observations and informed them I was going to be questioning the $2 million capital expenditure. I didn't believe it was an actual number to be used in this decision, but apparently it is. Having said that, I also said that I thought that I was somewhat in support of the fluoride, especially because I thought it was hundreds of thousands of dollars cost as opposed to millions. Having said that, I still can't agree to add another $500,000 worth of cost to obtaining a safe dental regime for Regina residents in the terms of fluoride. I think that the proof was well brought about by the experts who did appear to speak to us. I mean no disrespect to those who are against fluoride, but for me, not going in as an expert, I found some of that information to be a little bit almost on the misleading side for what was going on compared to the vast amount of experts who spoke for fluoridation. So I will put my neck on the line. I won't support the referendum, and I probably will end up supporting the fluoride motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mancinelli. Seeing no further questions or comments from council, Councillor Moll, you're allowed to close out the motion.
think I've said pretty much everything that needs to be said in my opening speech. I just truly do believe the residents have the right to decide on this issue as they have had in the past. Thank you.
Councillor Moll, City Clerk, please call the vote on the motion.
Thank you. I'll begin with Councillor Moll, please.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
Opposed.
Councillor Zahidniak.
Opposed.
Councillor Shaw.
Opposed.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Opposed.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
Opposed.
Councillor Stevens.
Opposed.
Councillor Hawkins.
Opposed.
Councillor Statnichuk.
Opposed.
Mayor Masters.
Opposed.
The amendment fails in a 2-9 vote, Mayor.
Thank you. Going back to the motion on the floor. Any other speakers to the motion 21-7 Community Water Fluoridation Program? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the vote. Oh, I apologize. Councillor Hawkins, you can close out debate. I apologize.
I just want to say how much I appreciate the comments of council, the help the administration has given us. I recognize that not everybody will agree with the end result, but I truly believe that this is a very good result for the city of Regina. It will improve our community health, and most importantly, it means that the young people of Regina have a real chance of a lifetime of strong dental hygiene and strong dental care. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Hawkins, please.
In favor.
Councillor Statnichuk.
In favor.
Councillor Stevens.
In favor.
Councillor Bresciani.
In favor.
Councillor Findura.
In favor.
Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Shaw.
In favor.
Councillor Zahidniak.
In favor.
Councillor Mancinelli.
In favor.
Councillor Moll.
Opposed.
Mayor Masters.
In favor.
Carries 10-1, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have communications on item MN 21-8, density target for market choice of housing from Kevin Reese, Carina Development.